What is the difference between strategy and strategic planning? And why is it so important for businesses and organizations to plan? Well, maybe the answer is if you don't plan and you don't have a strategy, how do you know where you're going? You're listening to Financial Sense, Arizona's financial podcast that answers your real questions about money in your business and in your life. Recorded at and brought to you by National Bank of Arizona, the only bank you need. Hello, I'm your host, Brent Cannon. I'm the Director of Community Banking here at National Bank of Arizona. Thank you so much for joining us today. On this episode of Financial Sense, we have a special guest with us today, Dr. Carol Poor. Dr. Poor is president of Poor & Associates Strategic Planning and author of Strategic Impact, a leader's three-step framework for the customized vital strategic plan. Carol, welcome.
Thank you, Brent. It is great to be here. And I've got to say, I'm a very proud customer and have been to many of your programs and events. So can't say enough nice things about all of the team and the support from National Bank of Arizona.
So Carol, on this podcast, we like to give people insights that they could only get from having a friend in the business. And so with that, I think it's great. It's a great place to start off with you telling the listeners a little bit about your background and also what was your inspiration for writing the Strategic Impact?
Well, thank you. And I am a native Phoenician, grew up in Arizona, love Arizona. My background includes the media for a few years. And then I moved into Salt River Project, a company that most Arizonans know very well. And it's a water power company. And I spent almost 20 years there in a variety of positions, from the public affairs, communications department, and leadership roles to strategic planning for about 7 years, helping to bring the management team together in different departments. And then was tapped to become a CEO of a healthcare organization, a nonprofit healthcare, Southwest Center for HIV and AIDS. Never had been in the healthcare business, so to speak, had been on many different nonprofit boards and even another bank board. In 2013, I started my own strategic planning business. Did a little interim CEO work for a while, but I focus on strategic planning, and I'm also a faculty member at Arizona State University in the School of Public Affairs, teaching leadership and teaching public policy and community development. So it's been a really rewarding career, and I put every bit of my background together to help clients and do what I do now.
So that is, I guess, in part or in total, the inspiration for Strategic Impact.
It is. And the reason I wrote this book was, first of all, I've developed strategic planning programs and facilitated these experiences that bring people together that didn't think they were going to have a very meaningful experience. And with some of the external panels that I've been able to bring in, some of the conversations about looking externally first, and then turning it into what's going on in our company, where should we be heading? Some of those experiences have been very meaningful to my participants and to the organizations. But the other reason is strategic planning has had a bad rap for being foggy and mysterious and not leading to anything except being a shelf ornament. And so I really wanted to turn that around.
Thank you so much for sharing your background, truly a diverse background, and certainly one full of experience and clearly lots of inspiration for the Strategic Impact, so which we are all grateful for. And the book, I think, is going to be just an incredible asset for so many business and different organizations.
By the way, this is what it looks like for the viewers here. Strategic Impact. It's available online at booksellers everywhere, local as well as online with Amazon and other booksellers.
So let's kind of delve into some specifics here for the listeners. How do you define strategic planning, and how would you kind of explain the difference between strategic planning and strategy?
Well, Brent, in my book, I do cover some of the traditional scholarly definitions, such as a disciplined effort to produce decisions and actions that shape and guide what an organization is, what it does and why it does it. But strategic planning really isn't a process. It's a management process that envisions a future, and it develops current and new programs and strategies to achieve that future. And in the book, I define a vital that means it's life-changing for the participants and it's life-giving to the organization. So this idea of vital strategic plan as being a combination of 3 frameworks. First, it's the strategic planning workshop. And whether it's one day or several days, or if it's a large company over a period of months and having various strategic planning meetings, but I call that the shared experience. Then the written strategic plan, and I call that the shared story. And in my book, I talk about not just a written strategic plan, but making it come alive with lots of visuals and then digitizing it, the potential of digitizing it and communicating it in a number of different ways that weren't even thought of and weren't even done a few years ago. Right. And then the third framework is a system for tracking the strategic plan goals, the strategic goals, and then communicating the results. I call that the shared outcomes. So that's the 3 frameworks for the vital strategic plan. And to answer your question, how does a strategic plan differ from strategy itself? The strategic plan is the plan that envisions the future, develops strategic goals, and most of the time that'll be a 3-year time horizon. But strategic planning is all about goals for the future and what are we going to get done this year. Strategy, on the other hand, is a set of choices that give a competitive advantage to an organization and that position the organization in the marketplace that really delivers differentiated market value, added value.
You know, Carol, I was thinking about this question, and one of the ways I like to think about it is strategy for me talks about how we're going to get there. Strategic planning encompasses really the why and who we are and who we want to be, right? So the strategic planning is the entire process, but nobody really takes the time too often, unfortunately, to go through a process and have a framework that is, yes, customizable, but applies a discipline to it that, that it's consistent.
Well, thank you. And absolutely. And you said a key word that's in the subtitle, and that is the idea of customizing a strategic plan. I do not believe that a strategic planning program could ever be templatized. Right. That's because each organization has its different dynamics, its nuances. And there's nothing more frustrating than a consultant that will come in and try to apply a large corporate strategic planning process to a small business. And so the idea of customizing the process is so critical.
I want to move on now to this concept of, small businesses and nonprofits. They look a lot alike. When you get a small business and nonprofit, at the beginning of the year, a small business doesn't have, we have 100,000 in the budget for strategic planning.
Right.
Right. And nonprofits certainly have that issue. I mean, they're trying to fund whatever their mission is, just day to day. I'd like you to talk about that and really specifically how your book can be applied and kind of your thoughts on that. I mean, when is too small, or is too small ever too small?
That's a great question, Brent. In the book, I have an outline that is, and it's not a template, you have to do it this way, but it is a framework for a very vibrant strategic planning workshop and process. Right. And then each part, I have tools of how to for the workshop, the written plan, how to structure a written plan, as well as ideas for the measurement. But if it's a small nonprofit, small business, the idea of getting the leadership team and the board together for a meaningful day and a half, or 2 days, and having a program where they can understand what's happening on the outside. What are some of the key trends? And I found that these external panels or guest speaker, keynote speaker to kick things off is a great way for the group to sit back, listen to someone else tell them some things that maybe they need to hear, and then start to really dive into what does this mean for us? But the idea is that you can have your own board of directors and key management team be assigned for looking at competitors or looking at best practices, and have that group bring back information that's part of the workshop, the shared discovery process. A good facilitator will guide and direct the process, but certainly the people that are involved need to be part of a very focused discovery process that culminates in talking about 4 key pillars. And we can talk about those in just a minute, but all organizations have 4 key pillars, no matter what the organization is. When you start to brainstorm, these ideas will fall into one of 4 buckets. First, programs, products, or services. All organizations have some type of program, product, or service. Second is financial health. All organizations have to be worried about how they're going to keep the door open, right? We know that as small business owners, where is the revenue coming from? Or if it's a nonprofit, what are the revenue streams? Third will be the operational effectiveness. Our internal operations like billing, human resources, those things that happen behind the scenes that allow us to be efficient. And then finally, external outreach, communication, branding, marketing, outreach. Those 4 pillars hold up an organization. And if any of those 4 pillars are weak, then the organization will be off balance or might just fall over. So the strategic goals are focused on those 4 pillars. And then from the 3-year, I say 3-year because most organizations, 3 years is a pretty good strategic time horizon. Those 3-year goals for each of those 4 pillars get broken down into what will we be doing this year toward that strategic goal. But those are the 4 pillars.
So once a company's had gone through the strategic planning meeting and have written a plan, and I know that's a quantum leap. We're making a quantum leap for time's sake, but how does a company avoid? How do they avoid having that plan become? I think I've heard you talk about it becoming a doorstop, or they get hung on the wall with quotes or nouns. How do you avoid? How does a company avoid that?
Right. Or become obsolete.
Right.
It's just never talked about again. We went through the motions, everybody. We have a strategic plan, but now no one follows up.
Right.
The first step is to take those strategic goals and put them into a grid, a measurement grid, a tracking grid, or a dashboard. I like to call them dashboards, and I love the red, green, yellow, where you are checking certain boxes on a quarterly basis at least to see if it's green going forward as planned, yellow in progress, or red stalled. And sometimes red doesn't mean it's bad. Red might mean we haven't gotten to it yet. It's not the quarter to start working on it. But obviously, if you have red in every quarter for 3 years, it's not, something's not happening. And it needs to be addressed by the management team, or if it's not a priority anymore, then take it off. But the key here is to get a tracking system that is simple, especially for small businesses, is meaningful, and you can rally your key leadership team around it at least once a month.
It keeps organizations and specifically all of us leaders kind of on pace and, going in the right direction, rowing in the same direction.
While I do appreciate we're in a time and day right now where we have to pivot, the famous word pivot, and be able to be flexible to go in new directions with all of the innovation that's happening. On the other side of it, we can't be pivoting all the time. Otherwise, there's no sustainability around the decision. Here's how I would develop a strategic plan. I get a handful of trusted colleagues, successful business people. If you don't have your own board of directors, create your own little circle, your executive circle, and have everyone take a look at competing organizations that are out there doing what you're doing as an organization, and have a round table or a coffee, have them come and note these things. What are some of the trends out there in your particular industry? Who are the competitors? And then begin to, brainstorm, where in the next 3 years do I want to see my business? And what would it take to become successful? And have the group brainstorm. and then begin to funnel those ideas into the 4 pillars, and then begin to look at those ideas and shape goals for the pillars. Those are some great things that any business person could do. And it won't take weeks and weeks. It might take a week just to go through that process and make it real, make it doable.
So Carol, what are some quick tips on implementing your strategy into your online presence? And are there any must-have tools when communicating to customers?
So there are so many ways you can digitize and bring your strategic plan to life. And I'm not talking about airing all of your dirty laundry and all of the competitive intelligence and the secrets, right? In the old days, strategic plans were documents that were supposed to be these top secret documents. Well, anymore, people want to know what they're aligning with. And with all of us working remotely, right? People need to have something that they can really read and absorb. And so this idea of putting your plan out on the website and maybe internally on your intranet and really bringing it to life through visual examples is one of the new techniques that I'm seeing these days.
That's really, really interesting. The old days of hiding everything and only, basically putting your product and maybe price or what your service was, those days are gone. And I think, the other word, sustainable. We're all looking to build sustainable organizations, and sustainable is a loaded word. It can mean, well, we're here in 30 years. Yeah, but it also means that we've grown. It also means that hopefully we've contributed to, to society as a whole, that we haven't just grown revenues. The old days of only paying attention to the bottom line are gone. That's the other important aspect to your book, and to, I think, the importance of strategic planning as well. So in addition to the book, kind of wrapping up here, what are some of the services or resources from you and your company that some of our listeners could use and could potentially reach out to you for?
Well, thank you for asking. First and foremost, I am a consultant that helps organizations of all sizes plan a program to gather the team and to get the strategic plan done, and then the structure a measurement system and help with follow-up if needed. But certainly structuring the program and facilitating the program. I can also do that virtually or help teach a team how to do it. So if I'm not hired to come in as a consultant, I can help an organization learn how to do their own strategic planning, because I can't be everywhere. Right. And then I do have some workshops on my website that I will continuously update and refine, but I have a set of workshops that are out there for less than a couple $100. People can watch all of them, and they'll be able to see how they can do this themselves. So those are just a few of the ways I can help small businesses, nonprofits, trade associations, and larger organizations as well.
Oh, that's wonderful, Carol. Just would you share your website for the listeners?
Yes, thank you. It is carolpoor.com.
Well, Carol, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with us today at Financial Sense. I think the listeners really had a chance to hear from you and I think learn a tremendous amount. One of the things that I hear so many times when I talk about strategic planning, and not only in small organizations, in large organizations, is, it's too hard and too time consuming and it's too expensive. Well, I think your book, and I'm going to show it again, Strategic Impact, and a leader's 3-step framework for the customized vital strategic plan, provides a great solution and solves those 2 big problems when you think of strategic planning. Carol, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you, Brent. Great to talk with you. Great conversation.
So I hope you enjoyed today's discussion with Dr. Carol Poor. Please check out more episodes on your favorite podcasting platform, or feel free to watch us on YouTube.